This is a complete board game collection that fits in a shoebox. There are 20 games in here covering 20 different genres to create the most well-rounded, smallest collection in existence. But it's not just the size that's important, it's about how much fun we can cram into this box, which is why I've invented a new metric called fun density. This is High Society, which clocks in at a svelte 27 cubic inches. And in that tiny vessel, it packs a board game geek rating of 7.2, giving it a fun density of 446, which, if you know anything about fun density, is a really good score. For comparison, this is Ticket to Ride, one of the best-selling games of this century. But it's hard to understand why when it has a fun density of only 33. And I'm brave enough to reveal that Gloomhaven only has a fun density of 11. 40 times less dense than High Society. Whatever it's weighing your shelves down with, it isn't fun. High Society is the auction game for our shoebox collection. You're bidding on luxury items, spending your cash to get the most points. But you mustn't spend too much because the player with the least money at the end of the game is out. They can't win. It's the perfect threat to get you penny pinching. Like if your bank killed you for going into your overdraft, which I'm sure they've considered. You're sweating because you don't know how much money everyone has left in their hands. And it's really easy to overspend because you can't make change, which forces you to bid 15 if you've already spent your 1s and 2s. Plus, it throws scandals at you, which you have to pay off to silence, as if you're being blackmailed by a tabloid journalist. If you don't pay, they'll cancel out your hard-earned points. Like all the games in this shoebox, High Society isn't good because it's small. It's one of my favorite games of all time that just conveniently comes in a tiny box. If you want to buy it, or any of the games in this video, there are links below that help support my important fun density research. You wouldn't expect to be able to fit a dexterity game in this collection, but Tinderblocks not only fits, it's one of the smallest games in here, fudding so high at 961 that it almost makes a mockery of the fun density metric. Almost. You're all building a campfire, adding wooden blocks to the stack without knocking it over, which would be hard with your hands, but to protect yourself from the flames, you have to use tweezers to pick up the blocks. Slidey plastic tweezers trying to grip onto smooth wooden blocks is a recipe for disaster, and your instincts for not dropping something are to squeeze really hard because that's how fingers work, but with tweezers, it will shoot the block out like a bullet. The game makes you create a stack of a log and 2 cubes, cubes that are wider than the log so you can't grip them together, that you have to carefully add at the same time, or put a log vertically, or use your weaker hand, which, as a left-hander, I don't find it hard to use my right hand, I just find it demeaning to have to act like I'm one of the unexceptional humans for a moment. While Tinderblocks is my shoebox pick, I also want to mention Rafter 5, another micro-dexterity game that makes a good alternative. And speaking of alternatives, I've made a companion video to this for my patrons in which I suggest other games you could put in your shoebox collection. So if you're looking for more recommendations of great small games, please check out that video on Patreon, link below. My goal with this video was to only include games that are available right now in English, but the trouble with English-speaking publishers is they're all idiots that insist on filling their boxes with air. On the plus side, if you get trapped underwater with a copy of Splendor, you'd have enough oxygen to last a week. German and Dutch publishers understand the fundamentals of fun density, packing great games into much smaller packages, and I've broken my own rule to include Tempel des Schrecken, one of the finest hidden traitor games in existence, because in English, it's twice the size. The trouble with getting games from Germany is they don't have English rules in them, which is why I've started learning German thanks to today's sponsor, Babbel. Imagine you take a trip to a cabin in the woods and you've gathered around to play this game for the first time. Oh no, the rules for this German game that I bought in Germany are written in another language. It's okay, James. It's called German, and I've been learning it thanks to today's sponsor, Babbel. Give me the rulebook and I'll translate it in no time. But I am German? Good for you, Wolfgang. I'm reading the rules here. Ich spreche Deutsch. I will read them. This is my thing.
Nicht lange.
Was?
Wir brauchen dich nicht.
If you want to learn a new language because you're going on holiday or, like me, you're trying to phase Wolfgang out of your friendship group, then Babbel is one of the top language learning apps in the world. And it's all about teaching you practical conversations that you'll actually use when traveling, because the lessons are designed by real language experts. I can't wait to go back to Essen and test out my skills. I won't feel like a brainless Brit having to order my daily bratwurst and potato spiral in English anymore.
Ich nehme ein Bier, bitte.
You can get 60% off a Babbel subscription by using the link below. And if you find it's not the right fit, they offer a 20-day money-back guarantee. So, unlike Wolfgang, you can't lose.
Warum? Du hast meine Karten verbogen.
You play as a group of greedy adventurers on the hunt for gold that isn't yours. Find all the gold and you win the game. But two of you are quite rightly trying to protect this sacred temple. They are the hidden traitors, who win by killing the adventurers. The rooms of the temple are dealt out amongst the players, and you look at yours in secret, then shuffle them. So you know what cards are in front of you, but not which is which. If you're an adventurer with some gold, you'll desperately try to encourage the other players to visit one of your rooms. But when they do, and then turn over an empty one, they'll wish they hadn't trusted you. It's not your fault, you protest. There is gold in there somewhere, but that's exactly what a traitor would say, trying to waste their time. Meanwhile, the traitors will be trying to win everyone's trust so that when the time is right, they can send them towards the traps and burn these robbers alive. Accusation, suspicion, betrayal, this has everything you want from a hidden traitor game. You won't find a better game in a smaller box for 4 to 10 players. If you do, let me know in the comments and I'll let you know you're wrong. Most deck building games come in massive boxes like Dominion or the Quest for El Dorado, but you can get that same feel playing Star Realms that is 18 times smaller with a fun density of 601. Sadly, the sacrifice you make is that it's only a 2-player game, but that's also its USP because it turns deck building into a duel. You are attacking each other's Starfleet, trying to wipe them out first. It's like that movie, Space Jam. You start with a weedy deck of spaceships and use them to buy better cards to add to your deck, then use them to buy even better ones. It means your later turns are so much grander and more exciting than your first, which gives you this great sense of achievement, like looking back at your first day of school compared to the monster you've become. The challenge is to grow bigger and faster than your opponent, and it's all about finding synergies, ships that work well with each other. The cards come in 4 factions, and each one helps you specialize. Red is all about attacking the other player, whereas green will help you heal and last longer. If you have another card of the same color in your hand, it unlocks bonus powers, and that's the game's secret drug, releasing dopamine whenever your hand perfectly aligns. Which is fair enough, it's all because you made the right choices on those first days of school, and they're finally paying off. I can only assume that would feel great. And just like school, it's not just about working on yourself, you have to remember to hold your rival back so they don't make you look bad. Destroy their space station so it's harder for them to get combos, or buy the cards they really want. This could have so easily been sold in a bigger box with tokens and expansions built in, but it hasn't needed that to absolutely decimate the competition. And we thank the shoebox gods that Wise Wizard Games kept Star Realms small. Meanwhile, every day a weaker game is released in a bigger box by all the publishers that are run by dumb wizards instead. You know those people that carry a gun everywhere in case something bad happens? The police. Well, I like to carry a game everywhere in case something good happens. I guess you could call me the fun police. And that job has been made a lot easier by wallet games. This tiny flap of plastic will protect me against my greatest fear, being out in public and someone saying, "I wish we could play a game right now," and me not having one. Nobody's ever said that to me, but that's all the more reason to be prepared. I'm probably due an influx. Death Valley is our shoebox's answer to tableau building, and it has a monumental fun density of 3,482, which makes it illegal in certain countries. It's a 2-player game about going on a road trip through the Californian desert. You're collecting sites in front of you, and each card scores in its own way. For example, the Scorpions want to be adjacent to mountains, and some will allow you to move them around to help with that. The desert is sparse. There's only ever one card to pick from, and if you don't want it, which is quite often, you can blindly draw from the deck. But it's a risk, because if you draw your third sun or third animal, you go bust and lose all the cards in your journey. You ruined your trip by getting heat stroke. Instead of taking a card, you can be cautious and rest, saving one to your scrapbook to protect it. But that's a turn you could be gaining more points. It adds this fun gamble. You know how many mountain cards are left in the deck, so you keep driving in the hope you'll see a coyote, but end up in Devil's Hole. The reality of wallet games is you're going to get a smaller, shorter experience than a proper card game. Death Valley can't compete with deeper tableau building games, but sometimes you want something short and sweet, and this is like a Krispy Kreme. It only takes 2 bites, and you're buzzing for 10 minutes. Every collection needs a bluffing game, and Cockroach Poker is the definitive pick, no matter how big your shoebox is. But with a FUD of 531, you're getting crazy value for volume. The game is all about giving a card to another player and telling them what it is, saying it's a cockroach or it's a rat, and they have to decide if you're lying to them or not. That's not a cockroach, and turning it over to see if they're right. If they called your bluff correctly, then you take the card as punishment. But if you fooled them, they get it. It's such a pure distillation of lying to your friends. And you've had practice. Of course I like your boyfriend. I watch your YouTube channel all the time. If you can't work out if someone is lying to you, you can actually look at the card and then pass it to someone else. But then you have to add to the bluff. It's actually a toad. So it becomes this group lie. You've all given different reasons why you like their boyfriend that they can't work out which one is true. In this case, none of them are because he's a cockroach. You lose if you get 4 of one animal in front of you, so you're sending traps to other players trying to bring them down. Because Cockroach Poker is like your friendship group. There are no winners, just one loser. You. I went on a hunt to find a tile laying game that would fit in my shoebox collection and found an absolute gem in Codex Naturalis. Packed in this tiny box is a puzzle game in which you're trying to build a secret manuscript of plants and animals. And does that theme make any sense to me? No, but if I can distract you for a second, this game has shiny gold cards in it. You're adding cards to your manuscript by overlapping the corners. And each one will add resources that you need to pay for those shiny gold cards. Now I have 3 mushrooms and an animal, I can add this card and score 3 points. But where do I put it? You'll often have to cover up a resource so it's no longer available. And the gold cards have corners which can't be overlapped, which means you can no longer expand in that direction. And that messes with the patterns you're trying to create to hit your objectives. You're building your own thing, but there's just enough competition over cards and racing to the finish to keep things interesting. And it's great from 2 to 4 players. When picking a cooperative game for the shoebox, there was only ever one on my mind, the ultimate heist game, Burgle Brothers. And I've blown my box budget on this beast. It's taking up 16% of the space. But sometimes you gotta spend 100 million on a star striker. You're moving your team of robbers through this building, trying to find the safes. You can scope out a room before you go in, but this is a heist, you can't take all day. So sometimes you'll run in without looking. And the building is full of traps and alarms you can set off, which will send the security guards to your location. It's a maze of narrow corridors, and to get through undetected, you really need to work together, getting another player to shout, "Over here," at the guards, so you can sneak behind them when their back is turned. It's a puzzle to solve, but one that totally fits the story it's telling. And you need to pick the best time to use your dynamite to blow up a wall, or your acrobat's ability to climb between floors. It's full of little touches that bring the theme alive, like when you open the safe and find the prized chihuahua that starts barking and setting off alarms. The life of a shoebox gamer does come with sacrifices. Most of the games in here are on the shorter side, but with Burgle Brothers, you get a full 2-hour heist movie experience. When we talk about a small box game that packs a punch, this one is a haymaker. If you asked me if I was going to put an engine builder in my shoebox collection, I would say nah. And I'm making some pretty hefty sacrifices to fit this one in. Nah is our second biggest game, and yet it feels dense. One of the reasons I picked it is because it packs a lot of game into a small space. There is no wasted air in this box. And it's a really efficient design. You pick a Viking and add it to your ship, then activate every card of that color, collecting points and resources. That's your engine, or at least one of them. The color you play also dictates which card you'll get from the display, which gives the game a nice flow. Play a card, take a card. Or you can go on a voyage to gain a destination card for big points. But to do that, you need to spend your Viking cards, destroying your engine in favor of another one. Because those destinations sit above your ship and you can spend bracelets to activate them to get more stuff. So it's about maintaining a fine balance between your two engines. You're like a Viking rock band. You can't keep touring the world without spending some time in the studio writing new music. The game is a race to get to 40 points, and it really speeds up once your engine kicks into gear, getting 8 points every turn, like a smug retiree who invested wisely in their youth. Nah has a great rhythm to it. You know what you want to do when your turn comes around, and you're not kept waiting by these massive, overblown turns where someone does a million things. Even with 4 players, somehow it's always your turn again soon. For a wheeling and dealing negotiation game, I'm delighted to be able to include Bonanza, a game that is so much greater than the sum of its art. You play as bean farmers, trying to make the most money by planting different types of beans. You want to grow your crops until you have enough to sell them, but the game forces you to plant new beans every turn, and if it doesn't match with what you've already got in your fields, you'll have to harvest them early to make space. And you don't get to choose what is planted because your hand is in a fixed order. It's like being tied to a train track. You can see what's coming, but you can't stop it. And that's where the trading comes in. If you don't want the cards you have coming up, you can swap them with the other players. And there's an urgency to get deals made. You're desperate not to uproot your soybeans for nothing. But your rival farmers know how much you want to get rid of them, so they'll insist you throw in some extra chili beans to spice up the deal. Or sometimes they'll refuse all offers because they'd rather see your crops go to waste. Bonanza is great at getting everyone talking, trying to hammer out 3-way deals that everyone's happy with. If you can look past the odd theme and the dodgy art, you'll find one of the best negotiation games ever made. There are smaller push your luck card games, but I'm willing to spend the extra space to include my favorite, Push. One player is flipping cards off the deck, deciding whether to stick or twist. But what I love about this one is how everyone's involved even when it's not your turn. They're adding the cards to 3 columns, but they will only get to take one of them. The other 2 will go to the next 2 players. They act like buffers, your box room to throw the stuff you don't want in so you can keep your master bedroom free for the good cards. Because each column can never have the same number or color twice, so if you draw a red 1, you stick it in a buffer column, saving room for the red 6 that you really want, because it's worth 6 points. But eventually, all the columns will fill up, and if you flip a card you can't place, you go bust. And not only do you get nothing for this turn, but you will roll the dice and lose all the cards you've collected of that color. It's like losing everything at the casino, and they follow you home to smash up your TV as well. And that dice will also get rolled if you end up taking one of these cards, which you will purposely add to the columns going to the other players. You're a kid throwing a grenade in their party bag because you resent them taking home your birthday cake. It's a game with big wins and big losses. Every time that dice rolls, you're bursting with schadenfreude, hoping to see someone rich pulled back down to the gutter. It sounds like I want all my friends to fail, but only the ones that are doing better than me. Fugitive was the smallest hidden movement game on the market, but now it's been surpassed by the second edition of Fugitive, which is even smaller. It manages to create that cat and mouse dynamic with just a deck of numbered cards. Each number is a hideout that the fugitive can play face down on their path to escape. The marshal is drawing from the same deck, eliminating hideouts they can't be at on their whiteboard. Then they will guess which numbers the fugitive has stayed at to reveal those cards. They're playing a deduction game because they know the fugitive can only travel 3 miles between hideouts, unless they spend extra cards to sprint, or bluff by spending them when they don't need to throw the marshal off. As the fugitive, you're trying to outwit the marshal long enough so you can escape. But as they get closer to you, the stress becomes so much that you'll just want to leg it to the finish. It's such a tense game. When you play as the fugitive, it feels like they're breathing down your neck and you're always one turn away from being caught. But then you play as the marshal and you feel like you're never going to get them. Or maybe I'm just bad at both sides. We're going to need a game we can play solo for when your friends are ghosting you because you've slagged off their bloated game shelves one too many times. My solo pick is the infuriatingly and inexplicably named Unsurmountable, a delightful puzzle of trying to climb a mountain. Your goal is simple. As you place cards to build the mountain, you must create a connected path from the bottom to its peak. But the only card available each turn is the first one in your base camp, and it's that restriction you have to work around. Each other card has an ability that you can use to rearrange the mountain or change what's available so that you can get the cards you need, but only if you discard it. And you only have 17 cards. You'll need 10 of them to complete your mountain, so you have to be really sparing with how many you discard. You can't make an omelette without breaking some eggs, but some eggs, yeah? Your omelette isn't the only thing going on here. I didn't used to be a solo gamer, but I really like this quick, simple burst of a puzzle. It's just the right level of thinkiness, and it makes you feel like you achieved something at the end of it. And once you crack the first level, it gets much harder, and I really enjoyed coming back to try and beat levels 3 and 4. For an abstract game, the obvious choice is Hive Pocket, a game unbound by cardboard, so it pours into our shoebox to fill its empty crevices. Most board game YouTubers would find it hard to calculate the volume of an amorphous bag, but not this one. Coming in at 150 mils, it's the board game equivalent of a luxury yogurt, with a fun density of 1,454, much higher than yogurt, which will never be ice cream, no matter how hard it tries. The goal of Hive is to surround your opponent's queen bee before they surround yours. You each have the same collection of insects, and each one moves in its own style. The spiders have to move exactly 3 spaces, and the grasshoppers hop over the hive in a straight line. So it's a real puzzle to try and maneuver your insects into an attacking position. But you also need to be careful not to get trapped. Your opponent can stop your piece from moving by freezing them with the beetle. Or if they move an insect so it's only touching yours, that piece is now trapped because you can never make a move if it would break the hive. Like all great abstract games, you start to visualize moves and plan a few turns ahead, predicting how your opponent will react. If I move my grasshopper here, then my opponent will cry. It's a game that you can really learn and improve at, so it benefits from playing with the same person over and over. And you can play it on any surface in any condition, so even if you don't survive the apocalypse, your partner can still have fun playing it with someone new. Our shoebox needs a party game, and I've picked the inimitable A Fake Artist Goes to New York, a game of unintelligible illustrations. On this tiny sheet of paper, you will all collectively draw the same thing by taking it in turns to add a detail with your color pen. Except one of you has no idea what you're drawing. They are the fake artist. Imagine Damien Hirst, but with a normal amount of self-doubt. They know the category, so they know to add something vaguely animal-like, but should it be a beak or a tail? Once you've all gone twice, you will scrutinize everyone's contributions and try to work out who the fake artist is. You sound like a bunch of art students trying to outdo each other. Oh, well, if you don't understand it, maybe you're not a real artist. It should be obvious, but actually the other players need to be cagey with what they draw, because if the fake artist can guess the word, they will win the game. So you end up with the worst depiction of a manatee ever produced. And with accusations flying everywhere, because the real artist can't distinguish between a cagey drawing and a clueless one. Fake Artist is brilliant. It will have you drawing like Picasso and crying like Van Gogh. To give our collection a roll and write game couldn't be an easier choice because we've got the absolute quintessential Quinto. Each turn, one player will roll the dice, and everyone will write that number on their sheet. You're trying to fill up your rows in order, but the numbers are coming at random. It's like trying to blind rank cute animals. You put the baby elephant at number 1 because you don't know what's coming next, and then you've got no space for the quokka. So do you gamble and leave room for a higher number that will get you more points? Of course you do. No one wants to settle for 14 when there's a chance of getting 18. But that chance is 0.5%, and you only score those points if you can finish your row. So holding out for an 18 is like keeping a table free at your restaurant in case a critic shows up when it could be serving paying customers. Eventually, it will be the only space left, and if you roll a number you can't write in, you go bust and lose 5 points. That's your punishment for daring to dream. And the game knows how much you want it, so it offers you a deal with the devil. You can re-roll those dice once. Let's say you rolled a boring 9. You've got space for a 9, but it's not an 18. Why settle for the bird in your hand when you've heard there's 2 over there in that bush? So you re-roll, give up your boring bird, but then get something even worse and go bust. It's a game full of highs and lows where your 2 biggest opponents are the dice that won't do what you want, and your naive hubris that this time they will. For our deduction game, we turn to one of the most popular small card games around, Love Letter. You're all in love with the princess, and you're trying to win her favor either by eliminating the competition or getting closer to her than anyone else. It's one of the simplest games in existence. On your turn, you draw a character card and then play one of the 2 in your hand. Each character has an action, like the priest, which lets you look at another player's hand so you know what they have. You're trying to survive by staying in the round, and if someone works out what card you have, you're at risk, because they could play a guard and guess your character. If they're right, you're out. This is where the deduction comes in. You know how many of each character is in the deck, and you know what's already been played, so you can make an educated guess. It's usually still a guess, but that's what makes it feel so good when you hit the target and eliminate them. You made them look so stupid in front of the princess that they ran home to flagellate themselves. I said flagellate. That threat of being kicked out puts you on the attack. You've got to kill them before they kill you. And it makes each round exciting, getting picked off one by one like you're in a horror movie. It's not the deepest game in our shoebox, but it is versatile. Love Letter is fun for 3 to 6 players, and you could play it with anyone. The best way to build a solid collection is with a foundation of older games that you know you can rely on because they stood the test of time. And for our set collection pick, we turn to Coloretto, which is old enough to drink in the US, and every other country as well. You're collecting chameleons, and the more you get of one color, the more points you'll score. But you can only score 3 colors. Any you have beyond that count as minus points. So everyone will be trying to saddle you with a hate rainbow. You're taking it in turns to add a card to one of these rows. Everyone will end up taking a row, so you're trying to create something that you want. But don't make it too good because someone else could take it. And instead of adding a card, you can run away with one of the rows, like a shopper on Black Friday buying the first TV that you see in case you miss out. You won't get the best deal possible, you'll end up taking less cards, but you're in charge of your own destiny. Whereas the others who are holding out for something even better will be stuck with the dregs. The fear that someone else will selfishly take a row early forces you into selfishly taking a row early. It's not your fault. You had to stockpile food and water in case they stockpiled it first and there was none left. Everyone knows which colors you're collecting, so when they draw a color you don't want, they're going to use it to spoil the row you're eyeing up. Coloretto is a fiesta of passive aggression, each of you an embittered curmudgeon who can't bear the thought of anyone else being happy. And hopefully that's a fun personality to adopt for half an hour, but if you're a doctor's receptionist, it could be a busman's holiday. If you've become obsessed by fun density over the last 30 minutes, I need you to sit down for a second because I'm about to make you vomit with surprise. This next game has a fun density of 17,026. Remember, Gloomhaven has 11, which means that Voyages is 1,500 times more dense than it. It achieves that by being nothing more than a piece of paper. It's a printable game. You buy the digital file and print it at home. All you need to play is a pencil and 3 dice. Where might you find a pencil and 3 dice, you ask? in your copy of Quinto. See, our shoebox is a terrarium, a fully contained ecosystem that waters itself. Voyages fits into our collection as a pick up and deliver game. You're trying to sail your ship around the map to collect goods and then sell them at a port. And the way you move is really neat. You use one dice to pick your direction, so a 2 will take you northeast, and a second one to determine how far you travel, drawing a line that many spaces. You're trying to end your movement on an icon to collect cargo. And the dice can make it really hard to get where you want, especially when you're on the bottom of the map and the dice are all sending you south, like you're trying to sail against the wind. You can use sailors to change the dice, but it's so easy to want to use them all the time to chart the perfect course and then have none left when you really need them and end up completely stuck. So sometimes you should go where the wind takes you, and there's plenty of options. You can head to an island to get gold there, or recruit a sailor to give you more control on future turns. And this is just one of the maps. For only £4, you get access to 6 different maps, each with their own mechanism, so they all play very differently. I love that it's a proper game that's been designed for this purpose, and it makes it so immediate. Anyone around the world can start playing this game in 5 minutes when this video ends. 6 if you can't remember your PayPal password. I almost forgot to include a memory game, but you might remember Order Overload Cafe from my last small games video. Your task is to remember all the orders coming into your cafe. One player will read out the list and everyone has to memorize as much as possible. Then you take it in turns to make a guess. Matcha latte. If someone has the card in their hand, great, you live to serve another customer. But if you're wrong, you're put on disciplinary leave and must watch your colleagues try and win this round without you. And it's so easy to get an order wrong. Confuse an iced latte for a hot latte, or a banana milk for a banana shake. Especially when only minutes ago you were trying to remember those orders in the last round. Making a memory game a collective job works so well. You're propping each other up without realizing. You focused on the muffins while Becky tried to keep track of the coffees, and Tom was fixating on the nuances between a ham and cheese sandwich and a hot ham and cheese sandwich. Each round adds more orders to remember, and it becomes so hard that there's a real camaraderie every time you pluck an order from the depths of your brain. It's so much more fun as a team experience than it would be doing it alone. That is my shoebox board game collection. If you want to buy any of the games, there are links below. And I've made a companion video to this with alternative games for each category, which you can watch on my Patreon. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel. I'm John Perkis, thanks for watching. Remember, you can get 60% off your subscription to Babbel using the link below. Let me know what language you'd like to learn in the comments. Hello, me again. I'm looking for a videographer to help me film B-roll for my videos. Someone based in or near London, because you'd need to come to my studio. You need to love board games. It's really important that you understand the games you're filming. You should know your way around a camera and be able to make things on a table look good, and be free for 1 or 2 days a month of paid work during the week. If that sounds like you, please get in touch. I've put a contact form in the description of this video.